Treasury bonds have dropped below $1 trillion, the lowest in 12 years, which indicates that China is selling the U.S. bonds that they have in the reserves. While Japan has increased the amount of bonds held, China has been selling them for several years, now falling from being the country with the most bonds to second only to Japan. But why are these two countries acting so differently when there is a financial crisis doing? What Japan is doing is normal when markets fall. Most investors decide to change their market investments for lower risk IEC for investments. And there is no safer investment in the world than the U.S. Treasury bond. This is because purchasing a U.S. Treasury bond, but also the world's strongest economy and the ability to print bills to repay its debt. But why is China selling its bonds, and what are the implications for the United States? The reason for all these sales is China's fight against the United States. China and the United States are the two major world powers, and China is on the verge of overtaking the United States in terms of GDP. Is basically the value of everything a country produces over time, and China is currently the second largest country in terms of gross domestic product with $19 trillion. And it is expected to surpass the United States by 2023 with $35 trillion. This is happening because the Chinese economy has been growing at a rapid pace since the 2008 financial crisis. The United States has two ways to defend itself from these currency attacks. One is by increasing the interest rate. The interest rate is the profit an investor will have when purchasing a bond, so the higher the interest rate, the more profits the investor will have. And when the U.S. raises rates, it manages to attract more investors, which reduces inflation and compensates for China's bond sales. Another way to win the battle is for the United States to buy its own bonds to offset China's sales. The Federal Reserve can also buy those bonds on the open market, raising their value. The U.S. began to buy more of its own bonds in Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Europe has been in a battle for energy, and Russia, backed by China, is willing to maintain gas cuts to Europe. As long as sanctions supported by the U.S. are not lifted, Europe is forced to rely on alternative energy sources, which are all more expensive. Returning then to the war between the unit and the dollar, China is not the only player that has been selling. Because of the COVID pandemic, many countries were forced to sell their dollars, and that favored China's plan. And as we will see, in most cases it is negative, which means they sold more bonds than they bought. The purpose of a country's dollar reserves is twofold. The first function is to provide support for its own currencies.